What I'm going to start by asking is I'm just going to start by asking each of you in turn to just tell us, for the sake of the camera, what your name is, when you were born, and where you were born. So, if we start with Peter.
Yep. Date of birth, 19th January the 30th, 1936.
Right.
Born in Brighton.
Okay, brilliant. And Jim?
Right, I was born on the 4th of June, 1932.
Okay.
And that was in Hove, and I've lived there most of my life now.
Okay, thank you. And Ted?
I was born in Southwick on the 8th of December 1924, 90 years ago today. Today.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
And what about yourself? Did you want to...
I was Peter Bryant, born in Brighton, 2/10/20.
Wonderful, thank you very much.
I've lived in Brighton all my life except for the Second World War.
Okay, now as you may remember, the project's meant to be focusing on teddy bears, dolls and construction toys. Now I know
you didn't mention that. You didn't mention construction toys.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I know from talking to a lot of you last week that some of those may provoke more memories than others, shall we say. But I'm going to ask you anyway, does anyone remember having a teddy bear?
Yes, I do.
Okay. What was it like?
You call me Ted, but I was christened William Arthur. But and the Ted comes round because of a teddy bear. I was born in a shop in Grange Road in Southwick, and my parents used to put me out the front of the shop in my pram with a big yellow teddy bear, and people went by and said hello teddy bear, and it stuck to me. And when I went to school, I was called Ted Bear.
Okay, so it stuck with you all your life.
And it stuck with me all my life. Yeah, I've never used it. I've never. Except for documents, I've never used my initials, my William Arthur.
Okay. Does anyone else remember having a teddy bear? Yeah.
Yes, I do. When I was very small, I was always scratching him, so he permanently had a sort of naked tummy, just with no fur left on him at all. But he was an old faithful. He eventually got replaced by a monkey, which was named Jacko, and he wasn't a patch on Ted, but it was a change.
So the next thing I need to ask you about is dolls. Now, does anyone remember having any dolls?
No.
And we could define dolls as baby dolls. We could define dolls as just little figures of people. You could have quite a sort of like broad definition of dolls if you want. So, you know, if you had little figures of people that worked on farms, or soldiers, or...
I had lead soldiers that were and lead farm animals. But I mean, lead toys were quite common. I mean, I don't think they're about now, are they?
No, they tend not to be about on sale because they're made of lead. But
yeah.
We've got a lot in the museum.
Have you? Yeah.
So did anyone else have lead figures?
I had lots of Britain's soldiers and farm animals and farm equipment made by Britons.
And how did you play with them?
Well, the farm had tractors and ploughs which I put together and played with. The soldiers I used to form up into ranks, not do much with them, but look at them.
So So it was about setting them out.
Setting them out.
I was a little more untidy with my toy soldiers. I used to go in our back garden, which had a lot of rockeries, and I'd make fortresses, and I gradually lose all these soldiers in the soil, and I had a few left over, but by that time I was getting a bit too big for them. But I used to play out there and have little trenches in sand and soil. Very untidy. My father was not pleased, but there we are. I didn't do too much damage.
Did they turn up later on?
Every so often, when there was a bit of weeding or digging done, they would come out a little tiny figure, very, very small, about inch high. They were a tiny range. And by that time, I probably wasn't interested. I can remember that just about.
So, construction toys. Does anyone remember having any construction toys?
We had Meccano. I mean, there was always Meccano about at home.
Meccano.
Yeah.
Yes, Meccano, that was the big one. And used to make almost anything and everything with Meccano, as long as you had enough bits and hadn't lost all the bolts and nuts, because they were nut and bolt connections. There was no sort of screwing to wood and things like that. But they were good.
No, I had Meccano as well.
I used to make buildings with my Meccano,
Okay.
such as churches, things like that. All bolted nut and bolt. Bridges. I made bridges.
What did other people make out of their Meccano?
Cranes and things like
Yeah,
that.
cranes.
I remember.
Yeah.
When my parents took me up to see my grandparents in Albion Hill in Brighton, we was always given a box of like stone bricks,
Yeah.
and with curved ones and straight ones, and you could build things with them. But they were just only just straight bricks. You couldn't connect them together like you do with Meccano.
Meccano, in my case, I can remember building a crane, and there was a winch. So you had a piece of string and a pulley wheel at the top, and I still have the grab in amongst some bits and pieces that are in a drawer of oddments that you don't throw away, but you've got no use for. So I've still actually got the grab, a metal one, obviously. Yeah, I've still got that indoors. But the rest of the Meccano goes on to, your brother or your sister. I had 3 sisters, so there were dolls around, but I didn't play with the dolls. But Meccano was.
Yeah, but I mean, our Meccano, I'd got 3 brothers and then 2 sisters,
Yeah.
and the Meccano went down to my brothers. But by the time my sisters were small, I was the eldest of the 5 of us.
Did your sisters play with the Meccano?
I don't think they did. No.
No, I asked because we were talking to some people the other day, and we were expecting the women to say, "Oh no, we didn't play with the Meccano," and actually the 2 women there, who must have both been in about their 70s, both said, "Oh yeah, we played with Meccano,"
Yeah.
and which was actually surprised us because we didn't think they were going to say that. But
Yeah.
Did they say what they made with it? What sort of things? Probably dolls' prams in miniature.
possibly, I'd have to listen again. I don't think they did say what, but you're quite right. We should have asked them what they made.
Yes.
Whether they made engineering type things or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cranes was a big thing though, wasn't it, Meccano?
Crane.
Yeah.
Crane. Well, mainly because if you had the pulley wheels and the winch and the grab, then it was the obvious thing to do, wasn't it? With so many cranes
About
proper
about
cranes
in the
being
harbour
about.
too, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah, yes.
And do you remember whether or not you always had all the bits you needed in Meccano?
I think you run out of screws
You
and
could
nuts
go
and
and
bolts.
buy them. You could buy extra bits at Taylor's in Preston Street, Brighton. Any parts you wanted for Meccano, you could buy to increase the size of your set,
If you could afford to buy them, if you had the money.
if you could afford it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A Christmas present, and that was it, wasn't it? You know,
A box full of it.
a
yeah.
box full.
Yeah.
And did you tend to make things that the instructions told you to make, or did you make up your own designs?
Originals.
I made up my own designs.
Yes.
Because I know from talking to some people, they were saying that actually when you tried to follow the instructions, you quite often found that the instructions weren't quite right, and you had to adapt it anyway.
Well, that goes even for today, in the modern days, doesn't it? With anything, if you're doing a DIY job and it's a flat pack, you can never follow the instructions because you just don't understand them. So, even
Yes,
to
and if
put
the
it up.
modern ones are made in China, they have difficulties with the language in the instructions you'll find.
I
found
was
that for
reading
my
somewhere
grandson.
that Frank Hornby deliberately put the mistakes into the Meccano instructions to force children to use their ingenuity to overcome the problem that he'd created.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So that
that's reasonable.
Yeah,
So he'd make better engineers out of the children that
That's
he
right.
was.
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you think he really did it on purpose, or do you think that was just him covering
Was-
himself
so
after
the
he realised
propaganda
he'd done it?
says.
Some and some.
Well, Frank Hornby not only had Meccano, but was very busy copying the American Tootsie toy small cars and trucks
Mm.
for his 00 gauge railway he built for sale with the small cars and trucks that he started building in England.
Yes, that's where the dinky ones come from originally, isn't it?
Before the
Mm.
Second World War, he had a small range. After the Second World War, he had an enormous range of dinky toys. But Tootsie toys in 1930, cars and trucks for sixpence, Hornby came out at 2 and 6 each vehicle.
Did any of you have train sets?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah?
Hornby 00, Hornby O gauge, and Italian gauge 1, all electric.
So electric ones.
Yes,
Is gauge 1 smaller or larger than 00?
gauge 1 is twice the size of O gauge.
Okay.
And that needs a lot of room.
It does. We've got
Yeah.
O gauge at the museum.
Yes,
So
that's right. Yes.
I mean, the train set I went just round and round in circles, I think. We
Well, I had a big workshop where I could lay out the track on the floor for 00 and O gauge, and Triang had another gauge which is slightly smaller than 00. So I had 3 railways of different types running, plus the 1 gauge which was big and needed a lot more space.
Have we got away from us being children with toys?
ooh, I don't know. How old were you all when you had these train sets?
From 10 till
About
15.
10, yeah,
Right.
about the same.
Yeah.
Because that's when you had a sort of boost in pocket money, which would help you buy some of those things because the 00 gauge,
Christmas
Well, never
presents
cheap.
and birthdays.
yes, Christmas and birthdays, and saved up pocket money if you could.
If you had any pocket money.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
You get a penny on
I
Saturday?
don't know about pocket money.
No.
No.
So would all your toys have been presents?
Christmas, yes, and birthdays, yes.
Believe it or not, my entire collection, which I kept in a storeroom, was stolen one night. And I got 3,500 compensation. Had nothing left. And then when I was 30, I started collecting again and had 200 cars and the dinky toy corgi range, trying. The railways I had again, all until I was 80 when my wife made me sell the lot.
And did you have it all on a proper layout, I assume?
I had an enormous storeroom where I had it all laid out.
Because I asked because some people, when we've been asking about construction toys, have been saying, oh, well, do trains count as construction toys? And I think actually if you're, sort of like you're constructing the rails, you're deciding how you put them together, even if it's just in a circle or if you've got a choice, or you're creating a layout with scenery, then that to me is very much construction, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Even more so if you're actually constructing the locomotives, which I know some people do.
Happy days.
Yes. Anything else that you made as children?
Well,
The Hornby bottled car, about that size, came in a kit and had steering and brakes and everything. Cost about £15.
What about anyone else? Anything else you made?
I remember some of the very first plastic aeroplane kits which came out just before the start of the Second World War, and they did a very short range, sort of Spitfire, things like that were typical, but they were a funny sort of plastic, and you had to get a special glue for them and special paint.
Okay.
Now that used to sort of shatter my father's finances somewhat, but there weren't many until after the war, and by that time I was too old to be interested. But just about 1940 one could buy British and German aircraft, small ones, in a 1/72nd scale. But since then they've been made in all sorts of scales, so it's quite different now. But it was fun in those days.
So was this pre-Airfix?
It was pre-Airfix, yes. It was mostly...
Airfix after the war.
That's what I thought.
Yes, Airfix was much later.
I'm actually sitting here with an Airfix Spitfire next to me. It's in
The
bed.
one before the war was a Frog Penguin, they were called. Why Penguin, I don't know, but they were the Frog Company. And they made this short range of plastic kits. But, they were fun.
So, anything else that people made that may not have been things that were bought from shops? So, I mean, we were talking to someone earlier who was remembering building forts on the beach because it was sandy.
I built a fort for my children
Okay.
with soldiers, guns and everything.
Micro models, which I think you did have in the toy museum.
The little cardboard ones.
Steam engines and buildings. I've probably got 20 or more indoors still in a case. not on show, I mean in a tachi case, up in the loft. And there are still some unfinished ones in there. I got too old for it, didn't I? I mean, I was at senior school by then. And I used to put cardboard, which was cornflake boxes and things, and tape together and draw tracks out on them and set the engines up with the coaches and what have you, sidings, shed.
There's one make of model that no one's mentioned, the Matchbox series, when hundreds of cars and trucks were made minutely in matchboxes and sold for sixpence. Then suddenly the Chinese took over everything. Hornby went to China to have its engines made, and slowly but surely the whole thing escalated and then died out.
Yeah, the toy manufacturing industry did go into decline, didn't it?
Completely finished in England and all went to China.
And France. Part of Hornby is now in France, I believe.
They still made Jouet models in France of cars and things. Jouet.
Apart from a box made out of orange boxes, the ends which were fairly solid, and using my dad's workshop, I made a wooden box to put my one pair of shoes in, hinges as well. I put the shoes in and the lid wouldn't go down because the box wasn't deep enough. So that's called learning by your mistakes.
Yes. And how old were you when you made that?
I would have been about 10 or 11, I suppose. Yeah, because we'd moved up the road from in the same road, and we'd moved up the road, and I was next to the greengrocer's shop, and so the boxes were available because I mean they came in wooden boxes, oranges and what have you, and you could break them up and use them for all sorts of things. Yes, and that's what I made, a shoe box. They went in widthwise, lengthwise, but they were too shallow for the lid to shut down on them.
So did you use the box for something else?
Yes. I'm thinking about it now. I could have put another piece round, couldn't I? Yeah. See, you weren't there to tell me, were you? No. And then put the hinges back on afterwards. Now you tell me.
You should have seen Lee with it. He'd have sorted it out.
Yeah, he'd have sorted it out. Yes, yeah. That was I expect that was probably my first bit of woodwork. Yes, which my dad was very clever at. As I mentioned about the wooden dog, which wobbled along because of the shape of the legs underneath, and it would actually walk along, all four legs being independent of each other. And you could do that on a downhill piece without pulling it as well if it was steep enough.
Was he get a design for it somewhere?
I think there must have been a design, yes, yeah, I'm sure. But to make the shape in the bottoms of those legs so that they moved like that and independently and one after the other, I thought that was, whoever thought it up must have been very clever. Yes.
So were any of the rest of your toys handmade?
Yes, and over the weekend when my wife was looking for a particular picture and we didn't find it, we came across, so I did remember you were coming on Monday. Was it in amongst my 50
You left it at home, Pete?
No, it was there this morning.
It's a big one, isn't it?
No, it's a little tiny one. Oh, there it is.
Okay. Oh,
That was another one that my father made,
I'm just going to hand it to Dan so he can
and I
wave
think
it at the video camera.
apart from having a number on it, you have to, because my father worked during the war, worked in the railway works, building the engines or doing engineering parts for engines.
What, Brighton?
Yes, at Brighton. Yeah, and I think it's got a name on it. I think my wife said it was Titch when she looked at it with the magnifying glass.
I'm getting Dan to take a photo of it so we'll be able to zoom in on the
Oh,
photo
right,
later
right.
and
Yeah.
the photo of the photo,
Yeah, so-
as it were.
Yeah, so that was, I remember that one, and I know my brother, who's 12 years younger than me, it was still around when he came along, so but I'm not quite sure where it finished up. It was well looked after. It wasn't big enough to sit on, but you could put all sorts of things inside it, and I remember it had, little gauges and handles and things inside where you would expect it to be for driving
Okay.
an engine. Yes.
It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah, I think it does say Titch.
Titch. Yeah, I think that's what.
T-I-C-H.
Yes.
Looks like to me.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So that's.
okay. Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you. Yes, I'll have to get that. I'll have to get it blown up.
Yeah,
I
they
think
do,
it was-
I bet they do it here. Or
Well,
David
they
do
put
it.
David do it. Yeah.
Mm.
I think it was yellow in colour, but that's irrelevant, isn't it? But, yeah, so there you go. I've got a picture of one of my toys.
That's very good.
So anything else that anyone remembers making or other people making for them or...
I know Dad made us a fort for the lead soldiers, and he also made a farmyard for the animals. But Dad was a bit handy with wood.
I made those in later life, and dolls' houses as an adult. But yeah, three dolls' houses, or 2 houses and 1 bungalow, to be precise. and I know at least 2 of those have survived through our children, and then passed on to my grandchildren. One of them, yes. But I think the fort's disappeared. Did make a fort, and there's 2 farmyards. One of those still survives. Yeah, it's taken on from a father, I suppose. Always using tools. And
Was
I
you
think-
allowed to use your dad's tools?
Yes, yeah.
The old man
yes,
wouldn't let us
yes.
use it.
No,
Get near his tools.
no, no. He had his own workshop. Say workshop. It was a room, and it had other things in it, but that was where he'd done his work. And a tool chest. When I was big enough, I could lift the lid up, because the lid had, I think it was 3 or 4 saws on it. So apart from being a wooden lid, about so long, that was quite heavy on its own. But once I could lift that up, I could find the tools. Yes, yes. Tenon saws was what I used to use, because the other ones were too big.
Yeah.
The tenon saw would be used for most of the sawing of wood.
So any other thoughts about any types of toy or play that we haven't yet mentioned that you think you'd like to share with the camera, as it were?
Occasionally one got roped into build, or should we say construct something that wasn't quite like a toy. One of my cousins wanted to have a tree house. So of course we got together and built a tree house. I was about 12 or 13, and we even managed to have a little cooker that we took up enough heat in it to boil an egg. But the tree house was there for 3 or 4 years before it finally fell to pieces. But that was a little bit out of the normal toy range. We had fun building it, and just came to pieces eventually. Got a bit old.
One of the other things apart from playing with toys, I started collecting stamps as a hobby and had quite a big collection of stamps. Then that ended.
Yeah.
You
I can see you've got something you want to show me.
a trifle, you said, if you open it up, I've written on the back of it. No, not the other side.
That side. Reg teaching his brother John to ride a trike
Yeah.
outside of the central garage.
Yeah.
Let's get that down.
You can have it.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. That's amazing.
Where was the central garage?
In Grange Road in Southwick.
Where?
In Grange Road in Southwick.
In Southwick.
That's amazing. Thank you very much. So, any other thoughts, or shall I pull you to a close?
You said you were interested in memories. There's a couple of books that I've written.
Oh!
You can have them.
Thank you very much.
No, Memories of Southwick.
Thank you. Thank you. Much appreciated.